Hari Om and Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Salutations to my Guru Swami Shantanand Saraswati and his Guru Swami Shivananda Saraswati. I start off with invoking their presence in this session so that they would guide us to understand some beautiful concepts on Devi. Om Hrim Shantananda Hamsaya Vidmahe Paramahamsaya Dhimahi Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat. Om Hrim Shivananda Hamsaya Vidmahe Paramahamsaya Dhimahi Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat. Om. Hari Om everybody, and welcome to the Saptami, that is the 7th Tithi or the 7th day of Navaratri. Though the English calendar we have it at the 6th day, but today is the 7th day, and it is the day that starts the 3 days of Saraswati. So Saraswati, as you know, is the goddess of learning and wisdom, and I would like to share today a very popular composition on Saraswati by the very famous Subramanya Bharatiyar. Was a Tamil poet, not only Tamil, but he was a scholar in many languages, many Indian languages and also European languages. Scholarship, he composed works in even European languages and many Indian languages. So he was a genius, and of course his literary works in Tamil are very, very amazing because they are in simple Tamil, and yet they carry the loftiest of ideas of Hindu thought, of the Vedic literature, Puranic literature. So today we come to the goddess of learning, Saraswati. Navaratri goes in a progressive 3 days with Durga or Kali representing the Tamo Guna, the dark forces. She annihilates the dark. And then we have Lakshmi, who is the Rajo Guna or Rajasic Guna, which is the activity of preservation, the activity of protection, the activity of nourishment, the activity, the busyness of the world, to do the business in the world. So that active business of the world of living, of sustenance, of finding our sustenance, that Rajasic quality is Lakshmi. Hence the color pink or red for Lakshmi and the dark black for Kali or Durga. And then we come to the Sattva, or the refinement, the purity, the keen intellect, wisdom, knowledge, learning, the arts, the fine arts, and so on and so forth, the subtle, the abstruse, the abstract. So from the very concrete, it slowly builds to the subtler and the more refined, and so she's white in color, the color of Sattva, the color of purity. Now, before I do the talk on the words of the great poet, I would like to share with you some ideas of the iconography or the symbolism of the arms and the many objects that the Devi Saraswati holds in her hand. In her front two hands, she has a veena, which is a string instrument, like a lute or like a, for those who know the sitar, it's something like the sitar. And she has this string instrument and it's held in a slant, in a 45-degree. Actually, I don't know whether you can see my altar. I have placed a small wooden veena for my Devi. And she has that veena in a slant. And then she has the She has four arms. The back upper arm, the right arm, carries a akshamala or a rosary. For those who are familiar with the Catholic religion, they have a rosary or a tasbir. We call in the Muslims have the japamala, prayer beads. So she has this rosary in her hand, and in her lower left hand, she has a book, like a pustaka, in the ancient books are palmyra leaves in India, which are inscribed with a nail. It's scratched, the lettering is scratched. So it's not ink uh, that will wear off after a while, but it's inscriptions on a palmyra leaf. So those are all bound together, and she's holding this book of palmyra leaves. So this beautiful symbolism, and she sits in a very beautiful white lotus. Again, as I told you, the symbolism of the lotus comes recurrently in all the three Devis, or at least Lakshmi and Saraswati. They are seated on lotuses, Lakshmi on a pink lotus, and Saraswati on a white lotus. And Saraswati wears a white sari, because white is the color of sattva, or purity. And it is also the color, as I said yesterday, which reflects all colors. So it is the substratum or the base on which all the colors of the world play. So she represents the very source, and she represents more than that, the pure and sharp intellect, which is white. Now she has the veena, or the musical instrument, in a slant, in a kind of a diagonal. And this tells us something about music. It tells us that music exists on two levels. One is the level of the senses. That means we listen to music as a sensual experience. We listen to music to indulge. So we go for a music concert to indulge in the sense of rhythm and melody. So it exists on the material level. But on another level, it progresses gradually into a level of spirituality. It has the ability to take you to realize the self, as I mentioned in the last few days. Music has twin qualities. It exists on the one level to entertain you, and on the one level, it exists to elevate you. One is secular, one is sacred. The secular becomes sacred after a period of time without our knowledge. Especially in Indian music, we may go to listen to a music program, and most of South Indian music is, even North Indian music for that matter, is based on religious texts or spiritual texts. So, and most of the classical music of India would have come from the lips or from the music of great saints who have realized God, who are one with God, who would have reached God through music. So music was the path. And so their music is music that is sacred and only exists not in auditoriums or in galleries for pleasure of listening, but they exist in sacred spaces of a presence. It evokes the presence of the Almighty. So if you take a great saint like Tyagaraja, he never sang for an audience. He sang purely to Rama, and he sang purely for the soul realization, in which he also proved that music in itself, without lyrics, in itself is divine. It vibrates, it takes your consciousness to a higher vibration. So that's why the veena is in a slant. Musicians who may start off their careers in Indian music with a mercenary intent, the content of the music being the Lord's name usually, would slowly have a transformative quality in the musician, that after a while, from his mercenary beginnings, he would slowly become very altruistic and then spiritual without his knowledge. And a kind of a imperceptible evolution takes place through the practice of music. That music that starts off purely as a physical thing, because of its intrinsic quality, would take the practitioner and take the listener to a spiritual consciousness over time. So the veena exists in a slant. It exists on the lower level and on the higher level of the intellect. It sits in line with the Trikuti, which is the chakra that elevates you, that brings you to a higher consciousness. Now, the two other hands, they carry a japamala, which is the japamala tells us of repetitive practice. And the book tells us of academic learning. In whatever practical sciences that we have, like be it music or surgery for that matter, or engineering, all these certain sciences require you to practice the practical aspect again and then again and again, in order, repeatedly you do certain exercises to gain a proficiency, to gain an accomplishment. The repetition would tip you into an area of intuitive knowledge. That intuitive knowledge is given the title jnana, and the bookish or academic learning is given the title vidya. So the vidya, the academic learning, is given the left hand lower position, and it is in level with the stomach. Similar with the veena, the lower part of the veena is in level of the abdomen, because you start off the music mercenary to fill your belly. You study your bookish learning, degree in accounting or engineering or what have you, so that you get a job in order to sustain yourself in the level of the abdomen. So that bookish learning exists on a lower level, whereas experiential repetitive learning, be it the name of God, which tips you into areas of intuition. Actually, I must share with you, over the last 1 year, I never used to be able to cook before. And Indian cooking is something that is very intuitive, because you look at a recipe book, of course, but ultimately you would just feel your way into the kitchen. But initially, I was cooking by looking at recipes, looking and following very, very meticulously the amounts of ingredients, and because I was scared I might goof up or make a mistake. So that repeated practice of cooking following a recipe has today over more than a year, slightly more than a year. Now I cook without looking at the recipe, and I make my own innovations. But the practice of the repeated cooking day in and day out, 3 meals a day, has tipped me into an area of intuitive way of cooking. That is the jnana. In music, you repeatedly practice the scales, for instance. The repetitive practice of the adavus in dance, for instance, or of the ballet bar, for instance. And this equips you with a sound technique that after a while allows you to freely roam in an area of creativity, and then harness certain ideas and create them and put them together. And that experiential knowledge, that is what is called jnana. Jnana is wisdom that comes from experience and practical, repeated practice. So that is why it is given the higher position. When you talk to a surgeon, you would see his experience when he does a surgical procedure, because he's done it day in and day out his entire life. And when a novice enters the surgery, you say, wow, how is he doing this? You know, it's because of the repeated, and then he comes up with creative points in the process of surgery, because his experience, his bank of experience brings him there to that point. The same thing with spirituality. The repetition of God's name would trigger certain vibratory qualities. After a while, you tip into an area of the intuitive perception of subtle truths in this universe. So the Divine Mother Saraswati is seen as the Jnana Mata and a Vidyavati. She's seen as Vidya with the book in her hand, and she sits with the Japamala. Now, music sits in a region which is both bookish, and it is a continual instrument that sits between academia and between intuitive wisdom. In Indian language, we call it Sangeeta Jnana, because ragas, talas, you cannot learn a raga like Ananda Bhairavi from a book. You cannot. You can read about it, but you have to repeatedly practice so many prayogams and listen repeatedly, listening, watching, and then replicating. The Guru will tell you, you repeat like this in a process of Guru Mukham, or from the mouth of the Guru. You slowly get an idea of something very abstract. Raga is very abstract. So then you slowly feel your way. And the same thing with dance. Repeatedly, the teachers will show you how a particular mudras should unfold, how from the literal to the more complex, from the literal to the abstract. Then how do you do a sancharam? How do you weave a story concisely, elaborately, and so on and so forth? There is a kind of a, because the most of Indian music and Indian dance, they are not notated in a book. Then unlike the Western music, which is notated, here the music is always Karna Parampara and Drishya Parampara. That means by watching the teachers, you gather ideas and by listening to them. So that is why it sits on this level of the Agnya, on the level of focus, on the level of perception. So this is a beautiful, beautiful iconography of Saraswati. We see how beautifully she's portrayed by the rishis to tell us this story of knowledge and wisdom. And what is bookish learning, which is temporal to a large extent, because whatever we learned in school, I'm sure half of us cannot remember the geography, and whatever we've crammed into our brain from the books, they just temporary, short-term memory we have of certain things. But certain experiential aspects of knowledge, through the experience, we hold that quantum in our brain, and that acts as our base. So there is a beautiful symbolism of Saraswati. And today I will explore a beautiful song. I can't sing this song very well, but we'll explore the lyrics of this song. The song actually has 10 verses, but popularly everybody we know in commonly two verses only are sung widely all over Tamil Nadu and those who know Tamil. So the song tells us where this Saraswati lives. Where does this goddess, where does she exist? What is the plane? Where do we find her? As subtle as she is, where can we find her? So it says, Vellai Thamarai Poovil Iruppal. Vellai Thamarai. Vellai Thamarai Poovil Iruppal. Veenai Seyyum Oliyil Iruppal. Vellai Thamarai பூவிலிருப்பாள். She resides in a white lotus, a lotus that has, as I told you, the lotus struggles to come out of the pond of mundane life. And then this lotus particularly is pristine, it's white, the white, pure consciousness. In the sattva consciousness of the rishis, the purity of their minds, there she resides as the goddess of wisdom and knowledge. வீணை செய்யும் ஒளியிலிருப்பாள். வீணை செய்யும், in the beautiful sound of the veena, that is the melody. I use the word melody. In the melody of the veena, in that blissful music, she resides. And then he says, கொள்ளை இன்பம் குலவு கவிதை கூறும் பாவலர் உள்ள திருப்பாள். கொள்ளை இன்பம். Imbam is bliss. Kollai means the heart that was stolen. Stolen, no? Kollai adikkirathu means to steal. When your heart was stolen by a beauty of a poetry, when you read some poetry, wow, you go like this, like this, how your whole mind is just stolen, means your mind has been consumed by this beauty. When something is so beautiful, we say, oh, I could just die. When we say, it was so beautiful, it was breathtaking. Breathtaking means at that moment you stopped breathing, your mind ceased to exist because the beauty was so overwhelming, it consumed you. There was no more you left. When you see something, wow, it was breathtaking. I just forgot myself. Forgot yourself. That is a state of samadhi. Beauty, be it poetry, be it painting, be it art, be it drama, be it theater, be it literature. It's so beautiful. I just lost myself in this. It was so beautiful. I just forgot. That is called in Sanskrit manoharanam. The mind was stolen, So that kollai inbam kulavu kavidai, in the poetry that consumes your mind in beauty, the poets who wrote this amazing poetry, which is actually like Subramanya Bharati, in their hearts, in the hearts of such poets, she resides. Now, the two first lines, one talks about Veena Seyyum Oliyiliruppal, and the next talks about Kulavu Kavidai Kurum Pavalathu Ulla Thiruppal. She talks about poetry, poesy, and that is literature and music are the two things that he first mentions. It's very beautiful that he mentions poetry and music. Those two coming together has a great significance. There is a shloka on Saraswati, a beautiful shloka. The shloka talks about the twin breasts of the Divine Mother. Saraswatya stanadvayam. Sangeetamapi sahityam Saraswatya stanadvayam. Sangeetam, that is the Veena Seyyum Oliyiliruppal, in the music, in the melody and poetry. Sahityam. Sahityam is literary beauty, poetic literature. Music and literature are the twin breasts of the Divine Mother Saraswati. Sangeetamapi sahityam Saraswatya stanadvayam. They are her two breasts. Ekamapata maduram anyata alochanamritam. Ekamapata maduram. One breast, it exudes sweetness, maduram. That is melody, because Sangeetam was mentioned first. So, corresponding to the first one, maduram. Anyata, the other one, anyata alochanamritam. It gives us things to ponder about and gives us immortality, the nectar of immortality. One gives sweetness and the other gives the nectar of immortality. How is this so? When I tell you a poem like வெள்ளை தாமரை பூவில் இருப்பாள் வீணை செய்யும் ஒளியில் இருப்பாள், I just tell you this line. Oh yeah, that's nice, it's beautiful, it's she sits in a lotus and she's playing a, but supposing I can't sing, forgive me, but வெள்ளை தாமரை பூவில் இருப்பாள், you know, when you hear the melody like that, wow, what, even if you don't know the language, if you like the music, you'll say, so beautiful. What does it mean actually? Oh, is that what it means? Wow, what a lovely meaning. The meaning enhances or accentuates itself when it is coated with music. The bitter philosophy, when it is coated, sugar coated with the music, it becomes so attractive that you listen to the meanings with more attention, because music commands that attention. Music has a quality of lulling the mind. The like the serpents, you know, when you play the makudi, the serpent is still. When you go into the music academy and Bombay Jayashree is singing, the entire 1,000 people in the academy are sitting still like in a state of samadhi. Nobody's fidgeting. The entire audience is like in a meditative mode. The minds are kollai inbam. Minds have been stolen. So music has that fantastic quality of giving focus, and then when you insert the meanings of the philosophy inside, that philosophy will open you into the vista of self-realization, which brings you to the portals of Amrita, which is immortality. Alochana, it makes you think. If I say, Entaro Mahanubhavalu Antariki Vandanamalu, if I just tell you these words in Telugu, which mean, oh, how many great saints, and to all of them we bow. If I were to tell you these words, well, that's nice, it's a good idea. Yeah, we bow to them. But when they sing it, as soon as you sing that, wow, oh, to all those great ones. See, the Raga Bhava, it lifts those apparently simple words to another dimension. So therefore, one breast is the sweet music and the other breast is the milk of contemplative literature or poetry. So the Saraswati, she has these twin breasts, and it's so coincidental that when Subramania Bharatiya starts this song, he tells of music, melody, Veene Seyyum Oliyil Iruppal, and Koorum Pavalar, Kulavu Kavidai. Kavidai is literature or Sahityam. Kavidai is poetry. She resides in the music, the melody, and she resides in the beautiful literature. கொள்ளை இன்பம் குலவு கவிதை கூறும் பாவலர் உள்ள திருப்பாள் உள்ளதாம் பொருள் தேடி உணர்ந்தே ஓதும் வேதத்தில் உள் நின்றொளிர்வாள் உள்ளதாம் பொருள் தேடி உணர்ந்தே. For those who seek a meaning in life, we are trying to find out the meaning of this whole life. And then the great ones, the great rishis who sought the meaning of life and went deep, ulladam porul tedi, and then they realized, they had this realization, unarnde, from a point of realization. And then that realization spilled out through their mouths as the Vedic truths. Going deep into themselves, ulladam porul tedi, they went on searching so deeply into their hearts, into the truth of this universe. Ulladam porul tedi, and then they realized the truth. And the words that came out were the chants of the Vedic truths that came out from the universe. In those Vedic truths, she shines behind them. She shines like a light, the light of wisdom that shines behind the scriptural texts. Ulladam porul tedi unarnde. The words, when I give my talk to you, I'm just giving a cerebral talk. Whatever I've read, I'm telling you. But if a Swamiji or a realized being were to talk to you, those words come from experiential knowledge. That is knowledge of experience of the truth. So that is the best. What I'm telling you is what I've read. So it's just from cerebrally or intellectually regurgitating to you. It's not my own experience of truth. It's just a fellow student like you. We are all students in this vast school of life. Just that maybe I have a little bit of memory for things that I read, that's all. So that Ulladam Porul, that Saraswati, where she lives in the Odum Vedatil Ulpurulaval. She is the Odum Vedatil Ullindrolirval. She stands inside and she shines behind these words. Kallamacha. So she shines in the words of the Vedas that are chanted, because the Vedas were not a written tradition, they were an oratory tradition, a Karana Parampara, and they were the realizations of the rishis that they saw the Vedic truths in their eyes, the mantra drishtas they were, the Vedic drishtas, they saw the truth, and inside that truth she shines. Kallamacha Munivargal Kurum Karunai Vasahatur Purulaval. This is one of those lines in the song that I really love. It says Kallamatra Munivargal. You know how beautiful that is. Kallam Kabadam. Without any deceit, without any ulterior motives, without any tinge of crookedness. So guileless, so innocent are the great saints. They are like babes, like children, childlike and innocent. And when they look at humanity, they are just filled with wisdom. When they look at humanity, out of great compassion, they would give instructions to human beings. I'll give you an example with our Paramburu Swami Shivananda, for instance. He's a great sage. He's a Kallamatra Munivar. He is an innocent, great, mighty giant of spirituality. In the tradition, ideally, we should get up at 4 a.m. every day and sit down to meditate, pray, pranayama, do some spiritual practice, some yogasanas and all that. In fact, the 20 instructions that he gives, the first instruction is get up at 4 a.m. Brahma Muhurta. But it's very, very difficult to get up at 4 a.m. every day. It's just impossible. It's very, very difficult. Our tamasic self will tell us different stories and we are unable to do that instruction. So what, out of compassion, the rishis, what they do is they say, okay, you cannot get up, but at least on Deepavali day, you must get up at 4 a.m. Because if you don't get up, it's very bad. Bad luck will come. They frighten us with it's not a bad kind of a fear. It is like parents simply frightening their children to make them eat or do something good. So at least on Deepavali morning, you must get up at 4 a.m. That is out of compassion. They know we cannot do it every day, but one day at least we can do. So that one day they tell us to do it in the hope that we will taste the beauty of that Brahma Muhurta and feel the presence of the saints and the beautiful vibration of that early morning. And then our souls would only hanker to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, and we will push ourselves to wake up at 4 a.m. So that Karunai Vasaham, Karunai Vachakam means out of compassion, they discount the teaching to one day. Try to live just eating one meal a day, live a simple life. Your body doesn't require so much food, just eat once a day. We cannot do that, we struggle. So they say, okay, Navaratri will come, you try living with one meal a day. 9 days we have lived. Hopefully we'll taste the beauty of that 9 days, and throughout our lives we'll live like that. Okay, what will happen? How will we live with only one meal? We will die, our body will wilt. This all we'll try to tell. Actually, a body doesn't require so much food. we kill ourselves by putting too much in. So out of compassion, the great sages, they come down and discount the teachings and give us in little capsules. That is Karunai Vasaham, that the compassionate instruction, because we cannot do a lot. So they say, do a little, but do it regularly. After a little while, the little will become a lot. See, what a great way of pulling us to the other end. Okay, you cannot get up, no, just get up a little bit earlier, maybe 6 o'clock every day, get up early. Then after a while, you'll suddenly be able to tip into that thing. You do little every day, like this. You do. And after a while, suddenly, before you know it, you can do it. Wow. That is the compassion. In those compassionate words of the sages, she resides. See how beautifully Bharadiyar has put it. Where does she reside? Kallamatra Munivargal Kurum Karunai Vasaha Thurporulavar. So beautiful. Vellai Tamarai Pooviliruppal. In that beautiful white lotus, she is Vinai Seyyum Oliyiliruppal. In the beautiful sound of the Veena melody, in the poetry she lives. In the Veda, in the realization of sages, and through those Vedic truths, she shines. And in the compassionate instructions of the rishis, who know how difficult it is for us who are caught in Maya, in their compassionate words, she lives, she resides there. So beautiful. See the places where the Saraswati is. Madar Teenkural Paatiliruppal. Madar Teenkural Paatiliruppal. Women have lovely voices, and they're high-pitched. Mariah Carey, Lata Mangeshkar, how high-pitched and so sweet. P. Sushila, beautiful P. Leela, all those singers, Vani Jairam, the Bombay Jayashri, the Mother Teen Kural. The Teen Kural means that Janaki Amma, her voice. I mean, that when we think of Teen Kural, I only can imagine these voices that are shrill and smooth like butter, and like how amazing these voices are. That amazing quality of these voices, that is where she resides. In the beautiful Madar Teen Kural Paatiliruppal Makkal Pesum Mazalayil Ullal. The babies, when the babies they prattle, they will say something, they'll mumble, no? And no one will understand what they speak, but the mothers will understand what the babies say. In that Malalai, in that a friend of mine, little boy, when he was small, he could not say Chittappa. Chittappa is uncle, father's younger brother's Chittappa. He would say Chipata. But he was so cute. So his Chittappa would say, okay, when you grow up also, you still call me Chipata, okay? You don't call me Chittappa. Because that sound of the baby is pronouncing it wrongly and mispronouncing so many things, and sometimes we can't understand. There's a beautiful article on prayer by Swami Shivananda, and he mentions when we talk to God, when we pray to Him, there are so many, we try to be very articulated, try to say prayers in particular proper sentences. He says, God knows your heart. The mother knows the babble of a child. The butler, in those days in India, the butler will speak some broken predicateless sentences to the European landlord, the European lords. But the European lord will understand what this butler is talking. You cannot, it doesn't sound like English, neither English nor Hindi. It will be on some mixed, come going, I'm eating, wrestling. I was wrestling, then vegetabling. Something is telling, all broken English, some real mess, but the landlord will understand. The kitten mews, the mother will understand. The cat will understand. So in the prattle of the baby, in the babbling of the baby, that sweetness that comes, that the shrill, the beauty of that babbling, in that sweetness resides the Saraswati. You know, how beautifully he tries to locate her. You see, he is that personal goddess who's sitting on a lotus with a veena in her hand, a japamala and a book. He makes her the abstraction. As I was telling you, all deities are a concrete form of an abstraction. So he is fracturing the mind from the physical form and taking us to where this, to meditate. The song is a meditation on the omnipresence of the Divine Mother in this form. Our mind is expanding. The music, the Vedic chants, the Rishi's words, the sound, the sweet sound of women, Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu, in the babble of the babies. Geetam paadum kuyilin kuralai kiliyin navai irupidam kundal. Geetam paadum kuyilin kuralai, in the cuckoo. When the cuckoo coo like this, it coos, in the beauty of that cooing, the sound of Saraswati, that is Saraswati. For us who are dancers, we know the prayer, Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya, Vachikam Sarvavangmayam, all sounds that we hear are the voice of Lord Shiva. Like that in this one, all sounds that we hear, so beautiful is the cooing like this. Outside this window in the morning in my house, there is one particular bird early morning at 5 o'clock. It's 5 or 6 o'clock, I think, just before the sunrise. It goes in a funny shrill little, every day at the same time. And I remember Swamiji, our guru in number 12, he'll always tell, Shankara, listen, at sharp 5 to 6, 10 to 6, there will be one bird. You see how beautifully it is calling its mate. And that mate from the other tree will be replying something. This one will say something, that will reply something. And the beauty of that sound of the birds chirping like this. Kuyilin kuralai, kiliyin navai, in the tongue of the parrot that repeats. If I say Samyukta, you say Samyukta, Samyukta, it will repeat. In the beauty of the repetition of the parrot's tongue, in the tongue of the parrot, and in the cooing of the quail, the Saraswati is seated. That means in natural sounds and in imitated sounds, in natural light of the sun, in the reflected light in the moon, like this, in the natural and the reflective. In both sounds, she exists in nature. So beautiful is her voice, Geetam paadum kuyilin kuralai kiliyin navai irupidam kundal Kodakandra tolilidai taaki toliludai taaki Kodahanda tolil. Faultless work. There are certain jobs that we do, certain skilled work, like only once you can do it. You cannot afford to make a mistake in that job. When you do that, it's done. There are faultless, certain skill craftsmen. Like when you go to Indian temples, you see the Gopuram, when they take the chisel and the, what do you call it? Chisel and hammer, and when they start carving a panel of Annapakshi or a panel of swans like this, they cannot go wrong, because if they go wrong, there is no way to repair them. Similarly, a surgeon, when he is doing, of course, today surgeons do mistakes and then it's different, but ideally you cannot make a mistake. The artist like a Bombay Jeshi or a Vidwan, when they're on stage, when they deliver, it is perfection. There is a ballerina, when she performs on stage, it is perfect. It is flawless. Of course, there may be some human flaw, but for most parts, it would be that Kodahandra Thoril, Udai Taki, in that kind of work of expertise, of high, flawless expertise, skilled work. And in also flawless in another sense. There are two kinds of work in this world. There is work that, some work that we do, some Thoril we do, makes us have to sometimes be a bit deceitful. Like in business, you may have to say some lies, and some, today even altruistic things like education and medicine have become mercenary. At one point in earlier times, education is totally selfless, and so is medicine. In those selfless, flawless work, inside that, Kulavu Chittiram, he gives examples like painting, like in traditional Indian painting, you cannot make a mistake. It's like either Tanjore painting or a Rajasthani painting, what do you call it, a beautiful North Indian Rajasthani paintings where everything is in profile. In those paintings and in Tanjore art, when you do it, it has to be a perfect finish. There is no mistakes. Kulavu Chittiram Gopuram Koil Kodahandra Toliludai Taki Kulavu Chittiram, like in painting, and Gopuram Koil, 4,000 temples in Tamil Nadu alone, all of which are active, all of which have tall gopurams, tall structures, granite structures, and you never find a flaw in those structures. They're all interlocked rocks, no cement, perfection. In that perfection of that beauty, in that perfection, in the flawless, selfless, we don't know who those people who made these gopurams are. Their names are not known. Who those great painters of the frescoes were in the ancient temples, we don't know. Kulavu Chittiram Gopuram Koil Idanaitin. Inside all these works of art, Yelilidai Uttral. Yelilidai Uttral. That Yelil, the beauty, Idai, interlacing between that, what is known as beauty in all these works of art. This Saraswati, where is she? She interlaces fine. That is why it's called a fine art. Because it's neither black nor white. It's neither this or that. It's a subtle shade. All fine arts is fine. It may look like this, but it's that. It may sound like this, but it's not. It's something like that. And it's perfect. So in that perfection of subtlety, in that subtle, that bliss that comes from that, the beauty. She is that bliss that comes from this fine art. She laces, she hides behind the subtlety of the finest works of art, painting, sculpture, and behind all that she shines. And what is she shining as? She's shining as bliss. Inbame vadivahida petral vellai thamare. The beautiful white lotus she's seated on. So you see, in this beautiful song, there is no physical description of Saraswati as how I had told you at the beginning, the iconography. I gave you the physical symbolism of a physical form. But in this song, he describes Saraswati not as a lady, but as these different spaces or concepts that exist in nature, in art, in spirituality. So beautiful is that concept of Saraswati. So you see, the Vedic goddesses Saraswati, Gayatri, and Savitri, they, in the ancient times, they never had a physical representation. They were given a feminine gender, but how they actually looked, we did not know. In fact, a lot of the bulk of Indian culture would be feminine in gender. In terms of rivers, the rivers of India are all female. Saraswati, Gangechi, Yamune, Chaiva, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri, all are female. Then all beautiful qualities in human beings like Maitri, Karuna, Kripa, Daya, Tyaga, Kshama, Shanti, all these are feminine. They are female names of girls also. Because that power of the Divine Mother radiates as virtue. Like this, so many things are feminine in gender, which are subtle, which are the Saraswatyam, that is the subtle, wisdom-filled aspect, is always Amshams of Saraswati, the feminine aspect of refinement. So beautiful is this composition. Unfortunately, I only know the first two verses, and those are the two verses that are made into song. So today's session is not very long. I'm just going to recap. She resides in the white lotus of purity of Sattva, the lotus of realization that comes from this mundane world into the point of realization that pure Sattva she resides. She resides in the sound of music. In the Veena. Kollai Inbam is a bliss that steals your heart in toto. You're totally absorbed in that sort of a bliss. That sort of a bliss producing poetry in the hearts of those poets who wrote such poetry, she shines. Kollai Inbam Kulavu Kavidai Kurum Pavalarula Tirupal. உள்ளதாம் பொருள் தேடி உணர்ந்தே போதும் வேதத்தில் உள்ளில் ஒளிர்வாள் உள்ளதாம் பொருள். The inner meaning, உள்ளதாம் பொருள். Searching for the meaning of life, we come across the Vedic truths. And in that Vedic truths, from behind that she shines. கள்ளமற்ற முனிவர்கள் கூறும். In the innocent, the guiltless, deceitless, the pure, innocent. You know, there's a beautiful symbolism. Agastya Maharishi, the great Maharishi, is short in stature. He's like a dwarf. So I once asked Swamiji, what is the reason why Agastya is a dwarf? Then he gave a very beautiful answer. He said, when you need to talk to a small child, you will go down to their level to talk to them. See, then he told me a story. Once Einstein was in a ice cream parlor, and a little girl with her mother came in and was sitting on another table, and the mother said, you know that uncle there? He's a brilliant mathematician, and he knows all the science. He's like a genius, you know, he's seated there. So this little girl, she got up and she ran to that uncle and said, uncle, you know, I have a problem with my homework in arithmetic. Can you help me? She said. And so he was standing, he knelt down to her height, and then in simple terms, he taught her, he reduced the complex idea into simple terms, and in simple terms, he explained to her what that whole thing is. So because he has reduced himself, he is Kulachami. We call Agastya the shorty, the short Rishi. Such great wisdom to translate to us who are in another plane of mundane existence. They come down to our level, and hence they are so short. He's short in stature. This shortness represents his coming down to our level to explain. That is the Karunaivasaga, that compassionate speech because of the metaphor of height. See, comes down and tells in simple terms, you do like this, it's very good for you. You get up early morning, you pray, then you do some asanas, you be vegetarian, don't eat too much, don't overload your stomach. When you are a little bit full, you should stop. Then you fast once a week. You do like this, little practices you do. Every day do a little bit. After a while, you'll find your life is very beautiful. You'll have a lovely health. You'll be able to have focus. Your brain will be focused. Everything you can do nicely. You listen like that. So they will make a very vast, big subject of spirituality like this. They'll say, you cannot read the Bhagavad Gita every day. That's okay. You just read one verse, but read it every day. One verse you do, little bit, little bit. So they reduce everything to simple things. And if you follow but that, suddenly you realize you opened yourself into a new world of amazing things. That is the Karunai Vasa. In this whole song for me, always that Munivargal Kurum. That line is the highlight. She is the content of those simple words of the great rishis who are innocent. Then, Madarthi Kural Paatiliruppal. She is in the songs of those beautiful women with such lovely high-pitched voices. What amazing magic when we listen to them. How is that possible, we wonder? That is Saraswati. That Saraswati is speaking to us through that voice. And see, from that lofty Janaki Amma, we suddenly hear a little baby talking in that height of Vidvat, height of a Bombay Jayashree. The Saraswati is shining there. And then a little baby who is crawling on the floor and prattles something very cutely. In that voice, she's also shining. Can you imagine? What a contrast. What the range of the Saraswati that she is. Makkal pesum மழலையில் உள்ளால் கீதம் பாடும் கிளியின் குரலை கீதம் பாடும் குயிலின் குரலை குயிலின் in the cuckoo's voice கீதம் பாடும் கீதம் means the cuckoo sings songs with like as if he's singing a song in the cooing of the coo coo like this in that cooing sound that heralds the springtime in that and in the repetitive voice of the parrot who imitates whatever sounds that you do. In both these tongues she resides. The nature poet that he is, the Prakriti, the Mahaprakriti that the Divine Mother is. Kodahandra toliludai taki, in jobs or in occupations which are selfless, which are flawless, which are perfection in presentation, in that perfect painting, in that picture perfect, we say, picture perfect. In that picture perfect, in that Gopuram perfect, in all this amazing art, she interlaces, she shines. Kodahandra toliludai taki kulavu chittiram gopuram koyil ஈதனைத்தின் எழிலிடையுற்றாள் இன்பமே வடிவாகிட. She hides behind all this art, but her form that is pure bliss, that bliss that is called Saraswati. So this song I wanted to share with you because I always felt that in this song we really feel the presence of the Divine Mother Saraswati. All that we see and hear and everything can be reminiscent of God if we were to keep our feelers and eyes and ears open with that consciousness. The song also helps us to keep our consciousness open to our remembrance, to consciously practice that remembrance. When we hear someone talking, someone talks nonsense to us, that is also Saraswati talking to us. When somebody is hurtful, that is also Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu. She's telling us. So we listen with that beautiful equanimity, the acceptance of this universe as the Divine Mother's play and the beauty that holds within. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's session. And I Namaste, Anna. Your daily lectures have been so helpful to collate philosophy content, iconograph. Yeah. Thanks, Chinmay. It's nice to hear a comment like that. Um, yeah. Beautiful is our culture. It has so many facets to it that we share. And I really don't know what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, but I hope it will revolve around something to do with Saraswati or Devi. A Kriti maybe, I might take up a Dikshitar Kriti or something like that. And through the many different compositions of the great saints, the poetry, we get a feel. It's like this huge mountain, and everybody is describing it from different angles. And so we get a sense of what this abstraction is by feeling through the literary works of the great ones. So with that, I'd like to end today's session. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Oh my God, it's a long one here. Divine Mother, if time permits, you could share on the remaining days your knowledge regarding the various color associations of the Divine Mother and related connections. The Samrakshan as being green in skin tone, and this symbolizes the fertility nature. It would be so useful if you could take the basic colors like black, red, green, etc., and share what you have discovered and internalized in a comprehensive way, though you have already shared so much regarding this on the previous days, only if time permits. Yeah. My knowledge also is a little limited in this color symbolism, but the little that I know I could share with you. Um, yeah, like with the color red, we usually feel Lord Ganesha is red, Lord Subramania is red, Devi is red. Red is always given, except Lord Shiva is white. Shri Gananatha Sindhura Varna, Lord Ganesha is red color. Shadananam Kumkuma Rakta Varnam, Kumkuma Rakta, also red, both blood and Kumkuma color, the brother. Both in Tamil, when we say Sopa, means pink with health. Pink with health. And Divine Mother is also Sindhura, Aruna Vigraham, Trinayanam. She's also the color of Sindhur. Adimadura Chapa has come, Aparimitam Arunodaya. She's Arunam. She's in the color of the rising sun. And in the Vibgyar, the spectrum, the red is the highest. From there, we go to tip into the range of infrared, into the colors that we cannot see in our eye. So they are radiating in the physical eye can catch the highest vibratory light is red, after which it goes into the infra colors, which we cannot see. So to show that the superlative quality, the quality of the rising sun, the idea of creation, the creative force, the idea like this sort of ideas connote the red color, and green, of course, of vegetation, black, of course, of absorption of everything into oneself. So Kali as the great consumer of time, because everything is absorbed, all colors finally dissolve in her. Everything, the whole universe gets dissolved or absorbed. So she's black in color. And white, yeah. Blue, the color Vibhum iti Vishnuho. Vibhum is because the blue sky, Nila Meghashyama, the color of the infinite sky is blue. Again, that is also infinity. Lord Subramania sits on a blue peacock to show the vastness of all space, and he holds a flag of the cockerel, which is time, which symbolizes the cockerel who's in the morning. So it heralds the time cycle. So for him, time and space are they are subject to him. It is Yavahanam and he's holding it in his hand, whereas we are subject to time and space. So these colors like that, they have subtle meanings that carry. And Gauri, the golden dawn, also the idea of gold as a radiance of the light of God. Koti Surya Samaprabha, the dazzle of the suns, a million suns, that golden sun. So like this, colors have symbolism. So the little that I know, I'll share with you from time to time. I don't know too much, a little bit I know, and then I can adichudran, which they say in Tamil, which is to just waffle on with the little I know. So I hope you've enjoyed the session, and tomorrow we'll meet again. And happy Saraswati Puja days. And to revel on this composition is so beautiful because we the artistry, the subtlety, the refinement, the compassion, the divine quality of that Mother Saraswati, it permeates through the poet, When he said, Kurum Pavalar Ulla Tiruppat, that's Subramanya Bharatiyar's heart, she radiates because he's a Kurum Pavalar, he's a poet. And so through his beautiful words, we also get to feel her presence in those words, in his words, in those words. So that is a beautiful Saraswati day. And I thank you once again. And we close over there. Hari Om. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mamritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody. And I'm so happy that you all are enjoying. And we'll see you tomorrow. There are 2 more days. Actually, I'm supposed to talk even on Vijayadashami Day, which is Friday. But I think I may not be able to do that. I'm just telling you all in advance. I hope people don't sign up on that day because I have some other work to do on that day. I didn't realize the timing and I printed it out there. And I'm sure you also will have things on that day, Vijayadashami Day. So I might wrap up the session on the 15th, which is Thursday. Am I right? Yeah. So, so please bear with me. And if you can, if you know people who are logged on to this, kindly tell them that it's until the 15th. Thank you so much. Hari Om and Namaskaram.